When I was 8 years old, I watched a public access documentary on space. I don't remember the name, and I honestly can't recall the overall content of the program. What I do remember is learning one fact. The universe existed on a scope so vast, my 8-year-old brain couldn't begin to fathom its operations. Before this moment, I don't suppose I ever considered reality much at all. I knew the Earth was large and that there were people on every part of the globe. I knew generally what the sun, moon, stars, and planets were, at a very basic level at least. As far as the rest of existence and its general workings were concerned, I grew up in Kentucky, where Christianity is an unspoken part of the culture. And by unspoken, I actually mean spoken. Even people that were presumably unreligious spoke in biblical euphemisms and thought of only one possible God where religion was concerned. So as an 8-year-old, I thought there were only a few things that existed: God and his angels, the devil and his demons, heaven, hell, earth, and us, human beings. Simple. 3 places, 3 groups, 2 sides, good and evil. My childhood world was cut and dry. As far as I was concerned, there wasn't much to evaluate. That is, until one evening when my mama Ruth put the television on KET for me to watch while she cooked dinner. My mom often worked in the afternoons, and I would stay with my great-grandmother until she got off. This would usually mean countless episodes of cartoons or something educational on PBS. This night was a documentary about space. I was oscillating back and forth between watching the screen and mindlessly doing my homework when a particular scene caught my eye. A CG graphic depicted a man standing on a street. The view zoomed out until the man was but a dot on a massive New York City grid, then further out to a fully digital replica of the entire city. The video continued outward to show the whole state of New York, then the US and North America, and then the Earth from space. The narration over was mentioning, roughly, how technology was allowing us to view things on a grander and grander scale. The animation now showed the Earth as a dot, positioned somewhere out behind the sun. It went on to the edge of the solar system and the Milky Way itself, the screen now depicting a cluster of galaxies, dancing around each other in a monumental cyclone. The voice said that the image on screen was but a fraction of the entire universe. We had just learned about fractions in school, a small part of something. A view larger than anything I could have imagined at that point, just a fraction of the whole universe. Within 5 minutes of a 90s quality animation of space, every single piece of information I thought I knew was chipped away. Every fact and every bit of trivia fell out of my head until there was only one thing left that I knew. I don't know anything. Hello, my name is Jordan Edmondson, and this is See for Yourself. This epiphany, this crumbling down of understanding would become a regular theme in my life over the years. I would take in new facts, figures, data, process them, form a narrative in which I could comfortably live my life. At a point, some new piece of information would barge its way into my brain in such a manner that all the other information would have to reorganize to compensate. I'm sure this is something we all go through in some shape, such as the process of growing up and presumably maturing, that you adapt your worldview to make sense of the environment around you. I would even venture to say that this quality of the mind is evolutionarily advantageous, in that the mental mobility it forces us to have is part of what allows us to live our lives. After all, the world is confusing. It can be dangerous. There is another side to this phenomenon, however, another mode of adaptation to new information. Denial. If this new piece of information rattles the foundations of your worldview, you could just reject it. This allows you to keep your narrative intact, and assuming that narrative got you this far, you can continue to safely live your life without the aforementioned confusion or danger. Now, I'm sure at the mention of denying new information, some of us have an image in mind. Perhaps the religious zealot who denies all science and social progress, or even a narcissist who denies all wrongdoing in any altercation they are involved in. Both of these are, no doubt, negative images of negative people. What makes them negative, though, is not simply that they are denying information, but that they are denying information that is arguably true. Well, what if that information was false? You could then argue that the denial of said information was a positive thing, because it allowed the person to keep the correct, or at least comfortable, worldview. These two distinctions are largely irrelevant. Semantics. Does it matter the validity of information if your interest in accepting it is based solely around a desire to keep your worldview, to stay in a cognitively comfortable place, despite that place being a farce? Does it matter if you're accepting the information, but only because it's coming from what you consider to be an intellectual or factual authority? When I watched that documentary as a child, I really had no way of knowing if anything featured was actually true. Because of the culture I grew up in, I subconsciously accepted that if this program was on television, presented as fact, it must be fact. I, of course, do still believe it to be fact, but per the point, at 8 years old, I had no actual way of verifying virtually any of the information given to me. Just 2 years later, at age 10, I was probably unwisely exposed to a little film called The Blair Witch Project. If you are somehow unfamiliar, The Blair Witch Project is a film presented as found footage following 3 documentary filmmakers as they hike into the Maryland woods in search of a local legend known as the Blair Witch. The film culminates in the trio meeting their demise, and the marketing leaned into the notion that these people actually disappeared and that the Blair Witch was indeed responsible. When I first saw this movie, I nearly shit my prepubescent pants. Growing up, I had heard various tales featuring demons, ghosts, sprites, and the like, but now I had to fit murderous witches into my concept of reality. This wasn't exactly like the moment I had with the documentary. This didn't shatter my perception of the world. It did throw a wrench in it, though. Now this, the year of our Lord 2022, we as a society know a little bit more about the genre of horror known as found footage. You're gonna have to forgive me, though, because Blair Witch Project kind of kicked off that whole phenomenon. Back in 1999, we hadn't yet caught on to the fact that, well, you could just lie in movies and on television. I wouldn't learn this myself to be factual for another 2 years. I was 12 before I ever found out the truth. The Blair Witch Project was fiction, just like any other horror movie. Anyone could basically say anything, publish it in media, and worry about backing it up later. This fact did shatter my worldview, just a little bit. Again, was there any way of discerning fact from fiction? Could anyone's word be trusted? At 12 years old, I only knew one thing. I don't know anything. Learning an endless vacuum of unchecked void exists just outside of our atmosphere, and learning that a horror movie was actually fake might not seem like they carry the same weight, philosophically speaking. I do think it's worth noting, however, that the perception of reality I had at those moments, that was to be changed by these respective pieces of information, was wrong. And it was, in fact, amended, for the better, I would argue, by the acceptance of the facts. My thoughts on existence and the subsequent ways they would be changed were also brought about by similar circumstances. I initially believed the world was a narrow, easy to understand place. I believed this because I grew up in a place and a manner that reinforced this idea. I perceived social cues as authority. When those views were changed, it was because I watched a documentary on television, something itself I thought to be a larger authority. And if a documentary on television is a large authority, then something presented as a documentary on a much larger screen must at least be an equally large authority. And so it was. I knew the universe was massive, and within its mass, there were supernatural creatures, or at least one, the Blair Witch. But what would be the even larger authority that would derail this idea? Book of Shadows, also known as Blair Witch Part 2. At least partly, let me explain if you're again unfamiliar. This unwarranted and unliked sequel follows 5 people who were obsessed with the, still presented as true, first Blair Witch Project film. So they go into some Maryland woods, spooky stuff happens, not much to say honestly. My main concern upon first viewing was that this film was clearly a professional production. Gone was the shaky yet believable amateur footage element of the original, replaced with quality lighting, picture, sound, and quite obviously, scripting, poor as the dialogue was. Not 20 minutes into the picture, and my little growing brain is already doing some quick equations. If the events of this film are to be true, how was it that everything shown on film is clearly a Hollywood production? I even recognized one of the actors from another movie. Book of Shadows was obviously fiction, that much was evident. Why would they make a fake movie about a real movie? Could it be possible that the first movie was fiction as well? And so, I went to a place I had only recently discovered, a place everyone would eventually go to find their own supreme authority: the internet. In 2001, we had just gotten a PC and dial-up internet service from AOL. If none of those words make sense to you, I wish I had your youth. As green as I was to using the internet, and as novel a concept as search engines were at the time, I knew how to pose the internet a question. I went to AskJeeves.com, a very relevant search engine for the time, and I asked Jeeves, is the Blair Witch Project real? As the internet was and is, I received a variety of search results. Many were along the marketed narrative that the footage was indeed real. However, scattered among these were threads from forums and message boards, some featuring comments from users reported to have definitive proof that the films were actually fiction. I followed these threads, so to speak. And to shorten up this whole Blair Witch tangent, I was able to pretty easily decide for myself that this movie was nothing more than that, a movie. I asked the internet a question I thought I knew the answer to, and the internet told me, I don't know anything. Now, if you've made it this far, I promise there is a point that I'm working towards. Just indulge me for a little while longer. I believe that basing your outlook on existence around the objective truth, ideally adding some sort of positive moral or philosophical anchor point, is the best way to lead a fulfilling and happy life. At least, this is what I have found works best for me. Mind, I don't think I am unique or special in this. Most people seek the truth in some form or another. Some folks just need to hear it from a proper authority to accept it as truth. Getting closer, but still en route to the point, this idea alone raises many more questions about reality and the world itself. Is it always possible to pinpoint objective truths? Which authorities are we to trust? Obviously, a discussion about worldview and acceptance of new information would be amiss without mentioning the current state of media. It is not quite as easy anymore to simply ask the internet if something is true and find the correct answer quickly. Alleged news media in television, print, and most predominantly online has become a multifaceted propaganda machine, catering to every spectrum of extreme and extremely dull ideology on the planet. So which authorities can we trust? Whom do they serve? And from where do they derive their authority? Getting closer still, but first, I'm still learning. First, I am 6 years old. I catch my mom swapping the tooth from under my pillow with a fresh dollar bill. The tooth fairy doesn't exist. I don't know anything. My brother is born that same year. Now my mom has 2 children. Everything is different. I experience instant, unexplainable, familial love the moment I see my baby brother. I don't know anything. I am 7. My mom, my mom's boyfriend, myself, and my brother are moving to Hollywood, Florida. We are driving down. It takes 2 days. We have one contact there, a friend of my mom's boyfriend named Steve. The day we arrive, we find out Steve has been murdered, pushed from atop a building. I didn't understand why someone would do this. I didn't understand that someone could do this. How dangerous could other people become? I don't know anything. We spent less than a year in Florida. I was told in school that nearby, Adam Walsh, son of host of America's Most Wanted, John Walsh, was abducted. He was found decapitated some weeks later. He was 6. I was 7. This terrified me. People are worse than I thought. I don't know anything. 2 children went missing from my school, and we decided to finally move back home. The drive back seemed shorter. I'm 9. A kid on the school bus shows me a page torn from a porno magazine. Wow. I don't know anything. I'm 10. I wake up Christmas Eve night to find my mom slipping presents marked "From Santa" under the tree. I don't know anything. I thought I already suspected. This one didn't shake me as much. She tries to explain it away, saying Santa was in a hurry, so he gave her the toys to put under the tree. I tell her it's okay. Someone else had already told me Santa wasn't real. I think I loved her even more then, knowing it was her who went through all the trouble and effort to get me each one of those gifts. She let me help her put out the rest of the presents. It became a tradition after that. I would help her carry on the illusion for my brother and sister in years to come, putting out cookies and milk, consuming them myself in the middle of the night after laying out the gifts. I am 11. I come home from school to find my mom crying. All she could get out was, "Honey, I don't think Mama Ruth is going to be with us much longer." We cried together. It was cancer, my mom explained. My grandma had fought it off before, but it was back, and it was bad. She passes a few weeks later. I hadn't yet considered that I may lose someone from my life, someone that was such a foundational and integral part of it. I am at the funeral, unable to understand why death must exist. I can't think of a justification for taking someone from their family, their loved ones. I can't help but wonder about the nature of God. What is the necessity of death? If God is all-powerful, couldn't He just make death unnecessary? I am 11, and I don't know anything. I'm 12. It is September 11th, 2001. A kid named Cody burst into my social studies class and tells the teacher the principal wants them to turn on the news. A plane has hit a building. I don't know what war is. I don't know what terrorism is. I didn't know that people who don't know me could hate me. I didn't understand why someone on the other side of the planet would be jealous of our freedom. Why would that provoke such an attack? I don't know what propaganda is. I don't know what violence is. I don't know anything. I am 13. I think I'm in love. I don't know anything. I am 14. I think I'm in love again. I lose my virginity. I don't know anything. I'm 15. She cheats. I clearly don't know anything. I'll pause briefly from this timeline to explain myself, because I know this is becoming a bit theatric. Throughout my entire life, I've made slight corrections to my attitude, actions, ethics, and belief systems. The catalyst is sometimes an event, sometimes a perceived authority, and sometimes it's just sort of figuring things out little pieces at a time. This is learning, and it's something we all do with various methods and levels of ability. It is one of the things that the human species seems to do better than most. Animals can learn, that much has been very clearly observed, but we can't venture to say these animals even have a concept of the world that can be altered to begin with. Some, more than others, seem to show much the same capacity for learning new things and expressing emotions as humans do. However, when it comes to shaping the mind in a way that can, theoretically at least, subsequently shape the world, it seems our species is quite nearly alone, say at least on this planet. When a person receives new information, let's use the example of a scientific discovery, they can propagate that information in a way that changes the whole of society. In 1831, Michael Faraday invented the first practical application of electricity with the electric dynamo. What Faraday actually did, you could suppose, was compile a variety of facts, data points, and information together and use that to imagine an object which could, following the path of these facts, harness electricity. A gradual exposing of truths led him to an invention that would be a worldview-shattering authority for the rest of the world. I am a person born in 1801, died in 1900. I see the entire landscape become gradually illuminated. Great pillars of billowing smoke are erected everywhere, supplying this new energy source to the world. I don't know anything. I am a person living in 1938. I tune in to CBS Radio a little after 8 p.m. on October 30th. Aliens have invaded the Earth. Is this possible? Is there really life on Mars? Has it come to wipe us out? Is this the end of my life? The end of humanity? I am in a panic. I don't know anything. Or do I? The notorious melodramatic reaction to Orson Welles' famous broadcast of War of the Worlds, a radio play based on H.G. Wells' novel of the same name, might actually be a bigger hoax than the broadcast itself. Investigation over the last few decades has revealed that very few, if any, people actually engaged in any widespread panic. The radio station did receive many frantic calls, but it's well understood that radio programming, especially back then, was indeed programmed. There was a schedule for broadcast, and most people tuning into CBS at 8 p.m. that evening did in fact know that they were listening to a scheduled radio play. I thought too, until quite recently, that this instance of mass hysteria was indeed factual historic record. Turns out, there was a slight twist in the truth. Turns out, I don't know anything. It is increasingly difficult for any of us to discern which sources of information are trustworthy. What is the motive for telling the truth, or for bending it? What is the motive for generations of people to spin a sensational story about an otherwise factual event for decades? Is sensationalism itself a motive? I suspect it can be. Where then do we venture to find the truth? I am 6. I learn in school the story of Columbus discovering America, the cooperation between the settlers and the native people. I am 17. In the same school system, I learn about Columbus's actual destination. I learn about the forced migration, the reservations, and the genocide. I try to understand how one source of authority can offer competing facts. I understand that I don't know anything. I am 18. I smoke weed for the first time. I feel like I'm 10 again, a euphoria I had never experienced. Everything was funny and absurd. Things became beautiful. Were my teachers, the government, society wrong about this drug? I don't know anything. I am 19. I try mushrooms for the first time. Fuck. I don't know anything. I am 21. I try acid. Holy fuck. I really don't know anything. I am still 21. This time I try DMT. I suddenly know everything. But it is incomprehensible, indescribable, incomparable. Everything in the universe was instantly boiled down into one base truth. I don't know anything. I don't want to spend too much time diving into the nature of psychedelic drugs. That is an entire conversation fit for another time. I do just want to touch on the ease at which one's entire perception can be shifted in less than a day under the influence of these substances. So much that not only does the world view change, but the world that you are viewing itself changes. There is more to see, more to experience, seemingly just out of reach. Everything there to know, none to explain. For all intents and purposes, leaving us still knowing nothing. At least, not knowing enough. I'm ashamed to admit, until the age of 13 or so, I used the term gay in a pejorative sense. I didn't understand the word. I didn't know its marked history or etymology. I didn't even know what etymology was. I was a dumb teenage boy that thought the common usage was the full definition. This changed when my mom brought a friend over, a gay man, and I used the word in front of him. My mom didn't scold me, but apologized to her friend and took me into the other room for what I would call a compassionate lecture. I am lucky to have my mom. She explained what homosexuality was, which honestly wasn't exactly hard to understand, even for a 13-year-old asshole. She briefly and casually explained a bit about homophobia and the meaning behind the word gay as I was using it. I apologized to her friend, slowly changed the way I spoke. This wasn't a life-altering moment necessarily. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a compassionate environment, allowing me to empathize relatively easily in this sort of situation. Still, I didn't know a word could provoke such negative emotions in a person or group of people. Around the same time, I learned about the history of other hurtful terms and outdated phrases. I realized pretty quickly that I didn't really know anything, and there was plenty to learn. The authority, in this case, was compassion, empathizing with the experiences of another person. If someone is experiencing evident pain, that pain itself is a truth. And though I personally didn't have a monumental mental shift through these experiences, many people do in similar situations. Realizing that your words and actions can cause people untold and undue pain should presumably urge you to change the way you speak and act. That is, of course, unless you deny the truth of that pain. Supposing instead, out of suspicion or cynicism, that pain is being faked to further some mysterious agenda. I am 22. I inject heroin for the first time. I am thinking, in the moment, they lied about the other drugs. Maybe they lied about this one too. I would say that I subconsciously must have known better if it wasn't so clear that I didn't know anything. I am 23. My daughter is born. I am withdrawing at the hospital. My emotions are careening between absolute joy and agonizing pain. I witness her take her first breaths. I am overcome with an instinct to nurture, protect, love. I know I must quit the drugs. I know it's not supposed to be like this. I don't know anything. Today, I am 32. I've been sober for 5 years. I'm what I would consider a proper father. I went to rehab. I went to prison. I adapted. I learned how to function, to cope, to live without drugs. I've gone from being hopelessly addicted to chemicals, homeless, derelict, and thoughtless, to living a life that I not only find contentment in, but happiness. And still, I know nothing. I've spent years, both long ago and recent, plunging into volumes of books, hours of documentaries, countless pages of essays and editorials, searching desperately for some semblance of an absolute truth to tether my life to. There is an inexplicable desire to be aligned with what is real, because truth itself must be authority. Truth must be the source of goodness. Anything else seems not evil, but simply incorrect. How then to know the truth when we see it? When is the time for open-mindedness, and when is the time for reasonable skepticism? After all, in the never-ending cascade of competing ideologies, antagonistic agendas, how can one isolate a single drop of information, track it back to its source, and verify it? Without witnessing an event yourself, can you ever really verify its authenticity? Are self-reports on experience reliable enough to write our history upon? Or must we always fall back on some sort of contextual, psychological analysis of the reporter, searching for the source of their authority, possible motives, and deception? Is all information worth looking into in the first place? If a fact or idea changed nothing about our lives in a practical sense, does it even matter if it's true? I guess it depends on how significant you find that fact. Let's assume that tomorrow you learn without a doubt that Tupac faked his own death. He's alive and well, living in Canada, but has no wishes to re-enter public life. He will release no new music, do no interviews, and wishes respectfully to be left in peace. Unless you are the world's biggest Tupac fan, as mind-blowing as this information may be, it really won't affect your life at all. You'll talk about how wild it is for a few weeks, and then you'll forget. The world will carry on the exact same. So does it matter if it's true? For this example, the entire story of Tupac being alive, which you accept without a doubt, is a conspiracy theory you found online. It comes attached with images of an aged Tupac with his family. A narrative is provided that you believe makes perfect sense as to why he would fake his death and retreat from public life. It must be true, and you're better off somehow for learning this truth, even if it doesn't change your life. However, this theory is simply not true. It is one of many conspiracy theories online that offers no authority and accepts no burden of proof. Here is the story, you sort the rest out. Personally though, in this instance, I don't think it matters whether or not the story is true. I don't see any immediate harm or danger in a person believing this to be the truth. Whether this story is based in reality or not doesn't really matter. It is a throwaway plot that exists somewhere outside of our personal lives and our subsequent stream of consciousness. Let me present you with another example though. You learn tomorrow, without a doubt, intelligent alien life exists. This time the information is presented by a coalition of global leaders and national space agencies. There has been a video transmission. Every film expert on the planet has verified its authenticity. It plays non-stop on every television channel and is posted over and over on every internet platform. The video features a group of 5 alien beings. They look humanoid, not like any of the images we have seen in popular culture, but close enough that we are able to comprehend their form. They explain their presence, their intention of peace, and their planned travel to Earth. This trip, even with their advanced technology, will take 1,000 years from the receival of the transmission. By then, everyone alive for this news will be long dead. For you, practically, this information won't change your daily life. You won't live to see contact, and presuming the Earth does make any changes to accommodate the coming arrival, they will surely be so slow that you won't experience much of those either. So does it matter whether or not this is some elaborate hoax? In this case, yes, I think that's pretty obvious. Finding out that intelligent life definitely exists elsewhere in the universe would undoubtedly have most any person completely altering their view of reality, their place in the cosmos. Although I suspect all of these changes wouldn't be positive, they would be significant nonetheless. People would behave differently. People would live differently, for better or worse. But what about finding out that all the world's leaders had just lied to us about the presence of alien life? not exactly negating the possibility of it actually existing, but taking away the concrete fact that it does. Not only that, but replacing it with a new fact. The biggest authorities in the world cannot be trusted. Of course, many people believe that this exact circumstance is on the horizon. After all, we do know of plenty of occasions on which the leaders of the globe have lied to us. We already deny their authorities, albeit when it is convenient for us to do so, when it fits our narrative already. Whether it's news, world history, personal anecdote, or philosophical pursuit, finding an objective truth proves more difficult with each day. The internet age has brought with it a ceaseless supply of information, featuring as much crucial fact as disgusting distortion. With every article uncovering a long-buried truth, there comes 10 more to bury a new truth away for a future expose to uncover. The information era has quickly become the disinformation era. And where does that leave us? I'm 32. My child is 8. They ask if what they said on the news is true. If Joe Biden is going to take us into a nuclear war. I ask her where she heard this, why she would be thinking of such things. She tells me it doesn't matter. Just answer the question. There are so many things to explain before I can adequately answer the question. No, baby, I tell her. That's nonsense. She persists. Ask why they would say it then. I try to explain, in a way she can comprehend, what's happening in the larger world, the effects it has on our country, the president's role. I want to ease her mind. I want to tell her the truth. I wish I could do better. She eventually relents, seems to understand just enough to be satisfied. To her, I'm an intellectual authority. I know everything. To myself, I am an inadequate educator, and I don't know anything. And such is life. I know, then I don't know. I learn, unlearn, sometimes relearn. We all do, for the most part. We base our outlook on our experiences, the experiences of others with which we can empathize, the information we've been able to receive on our respective paths through life. At the end of this shining road of yellow bricks, there is no magic wizard. There is no supreme authority to bank our moral compass on. There is usually only another human being doing their best to operate their life within their own world view. Sometimes this involves deception. Sometimes the deception is even unintentional. Like with science, new information often renders old modes obsolete. This doesn't make the old mode a lie, merely a recalculation, an adjustment. So where does that leave us? Adrift alone in a vast ocean of experience, data, and record, meant to sift through on our own, looking for clues without so much as a light to illuminate? Fortunately, I think not. In many cases, there is close enough to objective truth to be found. In many more, the facts can be taken at face value. If a person I have no immediate reason to distrust tells me they are hurting, and that I can ease the pain by correcting a behavior or action, I can easily accept that as truth and make the correction. When Bill Nye explained buoyancy to me at age 7, this was a fact I could incorporate into my worldview that continues to make sense to this day. After all, I see the way boats are designed. For all practical purposes, this set of principles is an objective truth. Science does still offer these. I wanted this first episode to be about information and the way it affects our lives. Podcasts, YouTube, and other forms of internet media have quickly become intellectual authority for many people. These folks have microphones, cameras, voices, platforms. They must know something. But I am here to tell you, I don't know anything. And I am happy to start here, because that means there is everything to learn, and we can do that together. Of course, you shouldn't take my word for it. I am not an authority. I'm just some guy. I would argue that you should rarely accept any source of authority at face value, at least not without principal understandings. Always look into things for yourself. Read the difficult books, articles, and essays. The truth isn't always the easiest answer to be found. Watch the documentaries and films. Consume news media if you must. And then go back and look into every thread coming from those pieces of information. But more importantly, try to set yourself up to have your own experiences. There is no better way to grasp the truth than by experiencing it firsthand. But like I said, I don't know anything, so please don't take my word for it. You really need to go out and see for yourself.